Today we are going to see computation of under or overhead absorption. So we are given four departments: Department A, Department B, Department C. Budgeted units for Department A 15 000, B 20 000 units, C 10 000 units, D 25 000 units. Actual units 5 000, 30 000, 16 000 et 18 000. Budgeted overhead 150 000, 180 000, 90 000, 125 000. Actual overhead 240 000, 110 000, 130 000, 100 000. Calculate fixed overhead absorption rate, FOAR. Calculate overhead absorbed in production. Calculate any under or over absorption of overheads. So we are going to see how to calculate FOAR, fixed overhead absorption rate. Now we are going to calculate FOAR for department A. We are going to calculate FOAR, fixed overhead absorption rate, or what we call overhead absorption rate. The formula: budgeted overheads over budgeted units. This is a formula to calculate FOAR. So we have to replace for Department A. What is the budgeted overheads for Department A? $150,000. And then we have to divide by budgeted units. What is the budgeted units for Department A? 15 000. So this will give us $10 per unit. So we have calculated FOAR for Department A, and then we have to calculate for Department B. Now we are going to calculate FOAR for Department B. So same formula: FOAR is equal to budgeted overhead. What is the Department B? What is the budgeted overhead for Department B? So $180 000. Then we have to divide by budgeted units. What is the budgeted units? $20 000, 20 000 units. This will give us $9 per unit. So we have already calculated for department. Now we are going to calculate for Department C. Department C, budgeted overhead. What is the budgeted overhead for Department C? 90 000. And then the budgeted units, 10 000. Now Department C, this will give us $9 per unit. And then we have to calculate for Department D. Department D, budgeted overhead for Department D. What is the budgeted overhead? 125 000. Donc $125 000. And the budgeted units, 25 000. This will give us $5 per unit. So we have already calculated for Department D also. Now let's see, we have calculated for Department A $10 per unit, for Department B $9 per unit, for Department C $9 per unit, and then for Department D $5 per unit. Now we have to calculate overhead absorbed in production. So what is the formula to calculate overhead absorbed in production? Overhead absorbed in production. So this formula will FOAR times actual units. So this is the formula to calculate overhead absorbed in production. So we calculate for Department A. FOAR for Department A, nous avons combien? $10 per unit. So $10 per unit, FOAR times units, actual units, 5 000. Donc ça nous donne $50 000. So we have calculated for Department A, overhead absorbed in production, $50,000. Now we are going to calculate for Department B. FOAR, we have got 9 times actual units 30 000. Donc ça nous donne 270 000. This is for Department B. Now we calculate for Department C. Again, FOAR, this for C, 9 times actual units. Actual units for Department C, $16 000. Donc, multiplié par $16 000, ça nous donne 144 000. Calculate the last one, overhead absorbed in production, Department D. FOAR, $5. What is the actual production in units? Actual units produced 18 000. Donc 5 000 fois 18 000 units, ça nous donne $90 000. So we have already calculated for overhead absorbed in production, FOAR times actual units. For Department A, 50 000. For Department B, 270 000. For Department C, 144 000. And last one for Department D, 90 000. Now we can calculate any end over absorption of overheads. So once this exercise is completed, then we can calculate end over absorption. In case actual overheads is greater than overhead absorbed, the difference will give rise to end absorption of overheads. So let's see Department A. For Department A, what is actual overhead? Actual overheads for Department A, actual overheads $240 000. Overhead absorb in production $50 000. Therefore, we will get 190 000 and absorb. 190 000 and absorption. Now we are going to calculate for Department B. So for Department B, actual overhead. What is actual overheads for Department B? Actual overhead 110 000. Actual overhead 110 000. Overhead absorb 270 000. Then the difference will give us 160 000 over absorption. So over absorption 160 000. So here we have overhead absorbed in production. Now we are going to calculate for Department C. Department C, actual overheads. So what is actual overhead for Department C? $130 000. $130 000. Overhead absorbed in production $144 000. So the difference $14 000. This difference 14 000 is known as over absorption. So here we have already calculated the first one, end absorption 190 000. Department B, over absorption 160 000. Department C, 14 000 over absorption. Now we are going to calculate for department D actual overheads. Actual overheads $100,000. Overhead absorbed in production $90,000. Then we have $10,000. This is known as end absorption of overhead. End absorption $10,000. So let us see what we have calculated so far. The first one, we got end absorption 190,000 because actual overhead is greater than overhead absorbed.